Hey Eric, I'm gonna do a kind of a short video. I've been really thinking about how I wanted to address the several questions. Um, I kind of feel like we could sit here and talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but it may not be necessary. I think I might just bring it down to a couple of thoughts here. The first thing, and I did this for years with Troy Grady, this wrist turning thing. Uh, let's do an over exaggeration. It's almost like it turns into a universal joint. Okay. And when you're practicing something slow and those big movements happen, yeah, it can work. But the biggest thing that it does is it overcomes correct inflection points. So when you're turning like this, the pick is facing downward, and then all of a sudden at a certain point, it starts facing upward. And I have a small little thing. You see how now it's upward, downward, upward, downward. This doesn't work at high speeds. You have to stabilize one particular direction. So when you're trying to high speed pick, if you know how to tremolo pick, it's almost like having a loose wrist like this it just doesn't work. The loose wrist is for larger movements like rhythm playing. It is not the same thing when you're coming in and trying to do speed picking. It's the same idea as running versus walking. At some point, the walking doesn't work, it turns into running. They are two different things that the legs are doing. So when you're doing a wrist turning like this, you can only go so fast, and then something else has to happen. And very, very, very few people talk about what the transition is, and the transition has to do with tension. So all this looseness must change into a tenseness that kinetically links through your entire arm of tension and stabilizes one position. And I'm going to show you how a little bit of tension keeps the movement small. A lot of tension keeps it small and fast. So this wrist turning, if you are using that as your drive, you're going to overcome inflection points. So you actually have to find the right angle, and then instead of wrist turning it, it's actually coming from the tension of the entire arm. And I like to think of the analogy of one of those door stoppers, those little spring door stoppers. When you flick them, the tension in the spring returns it back and forth to position. So I'm imagining my entire arm being a door stopper. So with that new thing of correct and moderate tension driving, you can then apply that to all kinds of other things. So I would have you work on what correct tension is in driving movement first, and then realize that my video about this has to do with setting my hand in that correct inflection and then just driving. And this can be done literally any angle. You can do it like this with upward pick slanting. You can do it with the Michelangelo Badio, where he is like cocked up rather than this. He's cocked up like this, and he just. So it's not so much cocking for you yet. You have to understand how to drive tension. And instead of it being rotational, you got to make it more of a small linear movement. This is like the next thing on top of that. Instead of an arc, you are really doing your best to try to make it a straight line across that string. So I have another little example here. This would be what rotational movement does. You see the plane is just, the inflection is changing constantly. You can't create smoothness that way. So what you're going to do instead is very straight. Not like this, not like this, not like this, or these things. You are just dead straight. Okay, that absolute straightness is what creates the smoothness. Now, with all this apparatus kind of contorted into weird bullshit, this is your actual movement vector. Look at all this. It's not even in the same alignment. It's just weird as shit. But when I do that and create straightness, that's how it becomes super smooth. So I actually think of a line of tension between here and my elbow as my actual vector. If you can believe that. Not even within my fingers or my hands, my arm. I got a line of tension from here to here. All right.